Boyfriend tried to control my showers, hobbies, and brother's visits, so I ended it before he moved in rent-free. Until just before the holidays, I truly believed I wasn't the asshole. But then my mom and aunt got in my head, and now I'm second-guessing myself. Let me start at the beginning. Up until early November, I, 28F, was in a serious relationship with Kevin, 30M. We'd been together for about a year and a half, and he was all set to move in with me at the end of November when his lease would be up. The timing seemed perfect. I owned my home, he was sharing a place with a roommate who just got engaged, and everything seemed to be falling into place. Kevin was, generally, a really good guy, funny, charming, easy to be around. I honestly thought I was in love. But then, just a few weeks before he was supposed to move in, he made this weird, offhand remark about my evening shower habits. For context, I have this glorious steam shower with a bench, and my evening routine is my self-care sanctuary. I'd spend maybe 15 minutes just steaming, then 10 minutes showering and washing my hair, sometimes with the water on, sometimes off, and another 5 or so finishing up skin care. I never hog the only bathroom or drain all the hot water. I only do this after I'm done with work, chores, even sex if that's on the docket, so why should it bother anyone? Anyway, Kevin said I would need to knock off things like that once we were living together. I asked him why, and he said I was wasting time and needed to be more present when I lived with a man. Excuse me? I can't have 30 or 40 minutes to myself? That led to a much longer, much stranger conversation about things about myself and my life that I would apparently have to change for him to move in. As if I was doing him a favor to let him live with me rent-free. Some of his issues weren't crazy, I guess, like wanting me to put my skincare stuff away instead of leaving it on the shelf, okay, fair, or not leaving as many shoes in the mudroom, they're organized on a rack, but fine, or wanting to do the composting himself instead of using a service, weird flex, but whatever. But some things were absolute deal breakers. He didn't want my 17-year-old brother and his friends over unsupervised by him, and he wanted me to quit volunteering at a local shelter that houses men. I was floored. He'd never shown any controlling tendencies before, so I tried to talk to him, to see where this was coming from, what he was thinking. He told me moving in meant that I was his and needed to act like it. Those weren't his exact words, but that was the gist. I said, bluntly, if that's the case, then we are not living together. I am not, and never will be, anyone's property. It wasn't as articulate as I wanted, but that was the message. I asked him to leave. A couple days later, we tried talking it out, but neither of us would budge. So we broke up, mutually. I was sad, but honestly more confused than devastated, a little shaken up and definitely questioning my own ability to see red flags. There must have been some, right? Had I just missed them? My friends all said I made the right call. My little brother, who may be biased because he loves using my 3D printer, agreed, but my mom and aunt went hard in the other direction, telling me, over and over, that I'll die alone, that I'm selfish, that in a relationship you have to compromise, that I can't expect a man to put up with my single girl habits. That Kevin was such a catch. It's been 2 weeks of this, and it's driving me up the wall, honestly. I thought my mom would at least be glad that I wasn't cutting off her free babysitting. My brother comes over when they go out of town, but instead she thinks Kevin was right, that my brother and his friends shouldn't be at the house with me alone, at their age. I've babysat most of these boys since they were little, I know them. So now I'm stuck. I know we're never getting back together, but am I really so unreasonable? Was I an asshole for wanting to keep my own routines, my own space, and not change who I am or how I live just because some man is moving in? Looking back, I don't think the issue was the shower, or the 40 minutes of me time. The real problem is that I discovered my partner was controlling. My mother and aunt keep repeating that the breakup was silly, like I ended a relationship over long showers, which just proves how selfish and wrong I am. But that's not it at all. For the record, my mom and aunt are both divorced, which makes their advice all the more bewildering. As for the utilities, they tried to needle me about my water and energy bills too, but joke's on them. My dad's a general contractor. He helped me renovate the house, install geothermal heating with a solar backup, so even my most extravagant steam showers barely move the meter. I'm lucky, I know. Thinking back, maybe there were earlier signs I ignored. Sometimes Kevin would roll his eyes at my hobbies or activities. I thought he was being playful, like when I teased my best friend about her shoe obsession, even though I love her for it. Maybe he wasn't joking after all. Maybe I should ask my dad. He always hated Kevin. Maybe he saw something before I did. And for the record, my little brother doesn't really need babysitting anymore. But he's always come to my place when my mom's out of town, and I think, though he'd die before admitting it, that he actually likes hanging out with me. I don't mind at all if he and his friends come over to play D&D or print models on the 3D printer. They always clean up after, always help with chores. They're good kids. It really bothered me when Kevin suggested otherwise, as if they couldn't be trusted. So, was I wrong to draw the line? Was I really the unreasonable one? Because the only thing I know for sure is there's nothing selfish about carving out time for myself, and there's nothing wrong with not wanting to change who I am just to make someone else happy. Update 1. A lot of people have asked me why my dad didn't like my ex and what red flags he saw, so I decided to ask him, And, fair warning, my dad has opinions. I don't necessarily agree that all the things he mentioned were red flags, but I wanted to know his perspective anyway. First, there was the time my ex lost his business about 6 months ago, which resulted in a mountain of debt. My dad offered him a job in his warehouse, just to help cover expenses while he got back on his feet. My ex found another job within 6 weeks, so he was only unemployed for a short time. To me, that seemed reasonable. Sometimes you just need to take a breath when your whole life falls apart. But my dad comes from the school of you can rest when your bills are paid and your chores are done. That's how he sees the world. Then there's the stuff around the house. I would be out on the porch, struggling with a hobby project, while my ex sat there on his phone. Now, I personally don't think this is some huge sin. Sure, it's nice when someone steps in to help, but those projects weren't his, and I never explicitly asked for help every time. Still, my dad saw it as a lack of engagement, a sign of indifference. Now, this next one actually does bother me, looking back. I was constantly hauling in bags of groceries by myself, making 2 or 3 trips while he just stayed put. That strikes me now as odd, even rude. At the time, I didn't fully recognize it, but it seems clear now that this kind of disregard for day-to-day partnership is its own little warning sign. There were other little things, too, home and car maintenance sorts of things. He waited for my brother to shovel the driveway, didn't mow the lawn, dumped a whole box in the recycling bin without breaking it down. When it came to my car, he never bothered to put the wipers up before a storm, didn't pump my gas. Those aren't his responsibilities, technically. It wasn't his house or his car, but my dad always went out of his way to help others, whether they were neighbors or family or whatever. For him, that's just being a decent, involved partner. So those are the things my dad pointed to as red flags. Some of them, I admit, I would have overlooked or justified at the time. Just to address a few things that have come up, steam showers don't actually use a ton of water, just 2 gallons for the whole 40 minutes. Because it's so steamy, you only turn on the shower head to rinse or shave. And in case you're wondering, my mom is only 46, not a boomer, though she and my aunt have definitely gone down some weird rabbit hole over the past couple of years. My brother and his friends, not just boys, by the way, will always have a place in my home. I love having them over, even if it means I end up living alone someday. That's just fine with me, and please, don't worry, there's absolutely no chance I'll ever take my ex back. The way he spoke to me, especially in our last few conversations, gave me the creeps. I might worry about how I handled the breakup, or if I should do things differently next time, but I know I can't stay with someone who sees me taking 40 minutes to unwind at the end of a long workday as some sort of failing. So long as there aren't kids or emergencies, that's my self-care time. If that makes me an asshole, then I'll own it. What really gets to me is the idea that someone could say, "Hey, I love you. Let's build a life together." But all the things that make you happy? Yeah, those need to go. Why be with someone who loves having her brother and his friends over, who treasures those moments before he leaves for college, if that's something you can't stand? Why talk about marriage with a woman who's deeply committed to volunteering, who's mourned losing friends too, homelessness and suicide, and then criticize her for caring too much? And yes, if it really annoys you that I take 40 minutes in the bathroom every night to decompress, why stay for 18 months, sleeping in my house, eating my food, and watching my TV? I'm not an experienced vending machine. I'm a person. I just realized how mad all of this still makes me. That last bit was not aimed at anyone in particular. I guess I'm just letting off steam. But here's what I know now. I want someone who shows up. Someone who cares enough to help me with the groceries, to offer a hand when I'm struggling, to get involved in the little things that make up a life together. I want to be with someone who sees me, really, and chooses to make my life better, just like I do for the people I love. Update 2. At first I thought it was a scam. Then 2 of his credit card envelopes arrived with the yellow forwarding stickers, and an email popped up from a freight company confirming delivery of 1 sectional sofa and 2 medium cartons to my address on Saturday morning. The note in the order said new place with girlfriend. I don't know why girlfriend felt so much worse than the couch, but it did. Like the labels were the point, and he could just write them on me and I'd become the thing. I texted him a photo of the USPS notice and said, "What is this?" He called immediately and launched into this soothing voice I've never heard him use on me, like he was trying to talk down a skittish dog. We both said things we didn't mean. "Your mom told me you need time to calm down, so I went ahead with the logistics. We'll be stronger for it. I've already put in for the change with the DMV and work, so it would be a huge pain to reverse, babe." I don't know if it's clear how quickly my skin went cold. He said it like it would be a burden to undo his audacity, so now it was my job to make his life simpler by just rolling over? I told him, very calmly, that we were not together, that he needed to cancel everything, and that he was not to show up at my house. Then I called my mother. She answered on the 3rd ring and went straight into that tone she reserves for when she thinks she's being practical. "Honey, you just need to stop making everything so dramatic. Men like decisiveness. If you waffle, he'll step up. It's what you want." She admitted she'd told him to be assertive and put the move back on track. It took me a second to find my voice. When I did, I told her, again, as calmly as I could, That if she ever invited my ex to make unilateral decisions about my life, she would lose her key to my house. She said I was overreacting. I said, "Bring me the key." She did not bring me the key. So I changed the locks. Dad came over with one of his guys before dinner and we put in a new deadbolt and reset the garage keypad. He didn't say "I told you so," which I appreciated. He did, however, ask if we should be home on Saturday morning. I didn't want to call the police over a couch in my driveway, but I also didn't want to handle it alone. My brother overheard us and asked if he could come. "I'll just sit in the kitchen," he said, all earnest, as if sitting in the kitchen turns him into an armed guard. I told him yes. Saturday, 8:15 a.m., a box truck backed into my driveway like it was arriving home. I was still in pajama shorts and a sweater. Dad was on the porch with coffee. My brother and his friend, who is not just a boy, thanks, were at the dining table, half watching a YouTube video and half pretending not to be on alert. The driver hopped out and started rolling up the door. Kevin stepped out from the cab wearing that smug blue pullover I bought him last winter. He waved like this was cute. "Babe. Let's just." No. I wasn't loud. I didn't need to be. He blinked, smiled wider, tried to walk past me. Dad didn't move, didn't puff his chest or anything alpha like that. He just planted himself at the top of my steps the way a person becomes landscape. "You're not welcome here, son," he said. Not angry. Not fake friendly. Just absolute like a fence. Kevin did the laugh he does when he's embarrassed and mad. "This is ridiculous. We have furniture coming. We already changed the address." "We're not," I said, because the sound of him narrating my life felt like a mosquito in my ear. "You need to cancel the USPS change. You need to reverse whatever you did with your work. You need to leave my property." He started in on the costs he'd already incurred, the time and energy, the late fees if he delayed the delivery, like the problem here was scheduling. I said I was calling the police if he didn't get off my steps. He told me not to be crazy. I called. The dispatcher asked if he was inside. I said no. She said they'd send someone. It took 10 minutes, which felt like 30. He paced on the walkway, doing the confident thing for the benefit of the delivery guys, I think. One of them, a kid with a neck tattoo of some insect, kept glancing at me like, "Do you want me to take this away?" He didn't say it, but I heard it in his shoulders. The officers arrived with the exact weary energy you'd expect for a domestic adjacent property dispute on a Saturday morning. I told them we had broken up and he was attempting to move in against my expressed wishes. They asked him if that was true. He tried charm. It slid off them like rain. They told him he had to leave. He asked, helplessly, what he was supposed to do with the couch. The kid with the tattoo called his boss and got a second run at it. The world kept turning. Kevin took a step toward me as if for a private aside and said, just loud enough for my dad to hear, "You're making a mistake you'll regret. Nobody else is going to love you if you make everything this hard." I can take a lot. I took that one, and then I handed it back. If love means I don't get to say no in my own doorway, I'm good. He flinched like I'd slapped him. He stared even when he got back in the truck. He didn't look at my dad. He didn't look at the cops. He stared at me, and there was something I hadn't seen before. Not the performative control from our last fight, something smaller and meaner and oddly fragile. I don't know if that makes sense. He's never been violent. He didn't get violent. But I saw who he is when he doesn't get to write the labels. After they pulled away, I sat on the stairs and shook for a while. My brother brought me a glass of orange juice and put it down next to me like he was feeding a wary cat. He didn't hug me. He doesn't do that. He just sat with me, knee nudging my knee, until I could feel my hands again. Then he asked if he could 3D print a sign that says "Steam in Progress" to put on my bathroom door. He asked dead serious. I said yes. He asked if he could also print one that says "Not Your House." I said yes to that, too. I wish the morning ended there. It did not. At 9:45, I received an email from my composting service confirming cancellation per your partner Kevin. My service hasn't missed a week in 2 years. I never gave them his name. He must have called and sweet-talked his way into my account and told them he'd be handling my waste management personally. Which would be funny if it hadn't meant that, the night before, my curb bin hadn't been emptied and raccoons had a black tie gala on my driveway. We've got Tuck's trash pandas in this neighborhood who know when a lid isn't latched right. I spent an hour with a snow shovel and a broom, swearing at coffee filters. When I got someone on the phone at the compost company, she apologized 6 times and said the guy insisted he was authorized and moving in Saturday. She reinstated me, upgraded me to one of those bins with the locking lid for free, and put a big "No Authorized Household Members on Account" note in all caps across my file. I laughed even though I wanted to cry. No authorized household members on account. There's a sentence I wish I'd had ready 2 weeks ago. I drove the USPS form down to the post office and filed the thing that cancels his change of address. The clerk, an older woman with impeccable eyeliner, looked over her glasses at Kevin's name and then at mine and said, "Men are so brave for thinking the rules don't apply to them." It was the funniest thing anyone has said to me in months and I almost hugged her. I did not. Boundaries. On the way back, I stopped at my mother's. She was making tea. I put my old house key on her counter and told her I'd change the locks. I told her that inviting my ex into my life without my consent was a violation and that until she could hear me when I say no, I was going to take some space. She said Kevin didn't mean any harm. I said intent is irrelevant when the outcome is someone trying to drag a couch into my living room. She cried. I cried. It was a mess, but I walked out without the key, making that familiar little jingle in my purse, and every step to the car felt like air. That night, the kids came over with grocery bags and cooked dinner like a little army. My brother's best friend, who is an actual magician with garlic bread, stood at my stove and bossed people gently, and my brother set the table with mismatched plates and 2 little 3D printed signs propped in the salt shaker, steam in progress and not your house. They were absurd and perfect and made me laugh so hard my stomach hurt. We ate. We watched a movie. After everyone left, I took the longest steam shower of my life and used every product I own in defiant, slippery succession. I went to bed with my hair wet and my skin smelling like eucalyptus, my windows cracked and the cold slipping and clean around the edges. I don't know what that all makes me, dramatic, stubborn, a woman with an expensive relationship to exfoliation, but I know I'm not wrong. I know what my house feels like when it's mine. I know what my body feels like when I'm safe. And I know this: if you have to forge your way into a life by calling the compost company and the post office and a freight carrier and my mother, it's not your life. It's a couch on the curb with nowhere to go. Update 3. Monday, there was a neon orange door hanger from sanitation flapping under my knocker like a flag of shame. Improper bulk disposal, a fine I didn't recognize for a mattress I definitely did not own. I followed the arrow on the form to the photo evidence and there it was, a sad, off-white rectangle at my curb at 2:47 a.m., with a moving box balanced on top like a hat. The box was labeled, in Sharpie, Kitchen, Kevin, and someone had taped a post-it to the mattress that said pickup confirmed, SAT. You could see my little front garden in the shot. You could also see, because God bless every bored homeowner on my block, my neighbor's Ring camera view in the corner frame by frame catching the drop. If you thought I was calm, you thought wrong. I marched to my neighbor's porch in my work slacks and a sweater and rang until her yappy terrier summoned her in a robe. She let me scroll the footage on her app with the stoicism of a woman who has survived 2 teenagers and a community Facebook page. At 2:41 a.m., a hatchback crept down the street with its lights off. At 2:43, it parked 2 houses up, hazard lights blinking like stage fright. At 2:44, a man got out and shouldered a mattress like a cartoon burglar. He looked smaller without his smug blue pullover. He had a baseball cap pulled low and a hoodie, but there's only one person I know who baby bird tilts his head like that when he's putting something down. He wants to look effortless. He propped the moving box on top, adjusted the post-it like a brooch, and jogged back to the car. The terrier barked once at the screen. Is that him? My neighbor asked, bland as oatmeal. It was him. The sanitation office is a beige building that smells faintly like sad coffee. I brought the door hanger, the video, a printed still with his license plate, and the memory of calling the police 2 days prior still burning in my cheek. The woman at the counter wore a cardigan with beaded flowers. She watched the clip twice, set down my phone, and said, "We waive for illegal dumping when you didn't invite the dump." Then she smiled with all her teeth. "Also, we'll send a crew. Also, we will be watching your curb now like it owes us money." She stamped my form with the satisfaction of a person who loves her stamp. Someone in a neon vest called "Not Your House" after me as I left, like it was a benediction. At lunch, my bank called. A cheerful man with the cadence of a podcast ad asked if I'd just added a secondary to my checking account. I introduced my spine to the ceiling. He read back a first and last name, Kevin. He said household member. He said the caller didn't have the verbal passphrase but got my mother's maiden name on the second try and also had a very convincing tone. I told him if my tone sounded convincing it was because I was about to throw up. We locked everything down, added a code word, enabled a note that says "Do not accept additions via phone for this customer" in capital letters that looked like a little shield on his screen when he read it back. He apologized like he'd ruined my birthday and then, very gently, told me to cycle passwords and check my credit. I had already changed half of them. I changed the other half. It is a special thing to write "Not Your House 123" on a post-it and then laugh so hard you have to sit down. I filed the address fraud form at the DMV after work. The line was long, a snake of people holding documents close to their chests like babies. When I finally reached the window, the clerk was a man with a precise mustache and a tie that had little traffic cones on it. He listened, typed, leaned his weight on his elbows, and told me he could flag my address as contested on Kevin's record. If he so much as tries to renew his license with your street on it, he said, my screen will shout at me. He printed a paper for me to keep and circled the number to call if a registration showed up in my mailbox. You wouldn't believe how often exes use addresses like leverage, he added, and there was something weary and kind in it that made me want to sit in my car afterward and breathe with my eyes closed. On the way home, I got a call from a number I didn't have saved and almost didn't answer. It was his roommate's fiancée. Her voice had that careful bright of someone calling stranger to stranger with an offering. I wanted to warn you, she said. He's been telling people you guys had a tiff but the move is still happening. He has a storage unit under his name with your address as the responsible contact. If he doesn't pay, they're going to call you. I did not appreciate how quickly my heart learned a new kind of beat. She texted me the facility details. I called 10 minutes before they closed and spoke to a woman who sounded like she'd eaten gravel for lunch in a good way. She looked up the account and sighed. He told us his girlfriend handles the house, she said. I told her his girlfriend did not. She scrubbed my address, added a red note to his profile that might as well have been a skull emoji, and told me, almost conspiratorially, that you can't claim tenancy through a storage lease, just in case he tries to say something in a month to a judge. It is wild how everyone in the city has a tiny law degree tucked into their day job. I thought that might be my allotment of chaos for the afternoon. Then my mother texted, "Can I come by?" She showed up with a bakery box and the old brass key lying on top like a relic. She stood on my porch, no makeup, little lines around her mouth shallow as pencil marks, and said she was sorry in the voice she used when I was 12 and she broke one of my Lego castles while vacuuming. "I thought I was helping get you over the hump," she said. "I didn't hear you. I keep thinking I know which parts of you are drama and which are the real parts, and sometimes I think I get it wrong." She pushed the key toward me with one finger. "You told me the boundary and I stepped over it like a runner who can't see the line anymore." Inside the bakery box was a lemon tart with a singe on the sugar I recognized from my grandmother's kitchen. I took the key. I took the tart. We stood on either side of my threshold like it was a river. I told her I needed some quiet between us for a bit. She nodded. "I won't invite anyone into your life again," she said. "Not even with my mouth." It was almost funny. It wasn't, not yet. But it settled like a promise. At 5, I went to the shelter. I hadn't been back since the Saturday circus because frankly I felt porous and I don't like showing up there like that. You carry your own wobble into rooms where other people keep theirs in paper cups and you risk spilling all over everyone. But the director is back from her leave and the kitchen is short 2 hands and there's something about chopping onions in an apron that cleans out my head. One of the guys I know, he's close to my dad's age, he's building a model ship out of popsicle sticks with this obsessive joy that feels religious, slid onto the stool across from me while I was labeling takeout containers. "You look like a person who took her windows down to let the air in and then it rained," he said. "Sometimes you want to roll your eyes at metaphors. Sometimes they hit you in the breastbone like a door." I told him a little. Not names. Not details. Just the shape of someone trying to move into a life they didn't build and then calling it love. He nodded without pity. "People want houses they didn't hammer," he said. "Doesn't make it their house when it leaks." Then he asked if I could print him tiny barrels for the ship because the kit ones look like sausages. I told him yes. We argued about barrel dimensions like the world was simple. The raccoons tried again that night. They came in tuxes I swear you could hear, their little hands on the bin lid like concert pianists. The new lock clicked in this satisfying way, a tiny mechanical no. I stood at the kitchen window and watched them puzzle it out, one tipping his head like Kevin in a baseball cap and then giving up with a huff so loud I could hear it through the glass. My brother's sign on the fence, "Unauthorized dumping will be filmed," looked very official until you noticed the 3D printed raccoon in a bow tie in the corner. Sometimes joy is ridiculous. Tuesday morning, I went to the courthouse for a restraining order because it felt like if I kept swatting at each fly one by one, I'd lose track of the swarm. The security guard at the entrance relieved 4 people of their pocket knives and told me I could keep my crochet hook when I asked him. Upstairs, the clerk behind bulletproof glass had a bobblehead of Ruth Bader Ginsburg on her desk that nodded along as she said the words temporary civil protection like a lullaby. I wrote it all down on a form that kept trying to minimize itself in neat little lines: the attempted move-in, the USPS change, the couch, the mattress, the bank call, the storage unit contact, the compost cancellation. I felt like I was testifying for a version of myself that hadn't learned yet where to say stop. The judge had hair like a silver helmet and eyes that did not move off my face while I spoke. He asked 3 questions. He signed. "He cannot contact you in any way," he said. "If he tries, call police and show them this." I folded that paper into my bag like it was made of gold leaf and would crumble if I breathed wrong. It hummed there all day. He tried to call me at 3:12 p.m. I watched my phone light up and go dark. He sent a single text message that came through green and then vanished. I saw just enough of it on my preview to read "You're humiliating me," which would have been funny if I hadn't suddenly needed to sit down again. A process server knocked on his work door 30 minutes later and handed him the envelope in front of his boss because the world is occasionally a playwright with good timing. I know this because at 4:02 p.m. my mother called to say he'd phoned her to say he couldn't reach me and she had told him that was now illegal and that if he came to my house she would call the police herself. It was not a perfect apology. It was, however, a clean line in the sand from someone who used to draw doodles over my boundaries and call it art. Dad swung by at dinner with a ladder and a mesh bag full of cameras I did not ask for. "I'm not hovering," he said, already up on the second rung. "I'm accessorizing your house." He installed one over the driveway, one by the back gate, one aimed at the curb. He did not speechify. He did not say see. He took the lemon tart and a hug, which he pretended to hate. My brother put a very small plastic barrel in my palm and told me he'd dialed in the scale for the ship guy. He'd also printed me a new bathroom sign in block letters: steam, then scream if necessary. I laughed until I almost cried. He pretended to be offended and then stole a second slice of tart while I wasn't looking. The house held the sound like a bowl. The storage unit called this morning anyway. Their system hadn't pushed the update, and a woman with a headset and a voice like a sunrise informed me I was the responsible contact for Unit 213 and there was an overdue balance. I said I was not responsible and also not the contact and also not interested in being a footnote on any piece of his life. She clicked, apologized, clicked again. "You're off," she said. "And there's a permanent note. And I'm going to say this out loud because I don't get too often. You are doing great." I thanked her. I cried in my car in the grocery store parking lot for 45 seconds, then went inside and bought fresh eucalyptus and a loaf of good bread, like you refill your life the same way you empty it, on purpose. It is almost comical, the number of edges a person can sand down in a week. The compost bin is locked. The USPS has my form with 3 stamps. The bank has my code word. The DMV has a little red flag. The court has a signature. The camera points at the curb where strangers used to leave their intentions. There is lemon tart in my fridge and a mother with an empty key ring and a dad who knows where the stud is every time and a brother who prints warning signs, barrels, and jokes on demand. The house feels like it exhaled after holding its breath for days. Tonight I didn't steam. I made tea and sat on my porch in a sweater with holes in the cuffs like thumb warmers and listened to the nice sounds of a street that does not belong to anyone else. Someone walked a dog. Somebody's baby laughed like a gull. The eucalyptus in my kitchen is making the whole place smell like an expensive spa I didn't have to earn. If this is dramatic, fine. If it is stubborn, good. It is also mine, and if you have to lug a mattress across town at 2 a.m. to try to claim a space that keeps saying no, here is a free bit of wisdom from this week I did not ask to live. It's not your house. It's a curb with a camera and a very alert sanitation department and a woman on the other side of the door who knows exactly where her lock is. Update 4. Wednesday morning, my doorbell rang and there was a florist on my porch holding a vase big enough to bathe a small ferret. 24 white roses, 2 branches of eucalyptus, baby's breath like a bad decision. The card said, in handwriting that looked like it had been concentrating very hard, "Can't wait to finally be home with you, K." The restraining order says no contact directly or indirectly. I called the non-emergency line, because apparently I now know the menu tree by heart. An officer came by, looked at the note, took a photo, took my statement, told me I could keep the flowers or bin them. I donated the bouquet to the shelter front desk and kept the vase because it has a narrow neck that will be perfect for single tulips in February. I forwarded the florist receipt that came to my email 30 minutes later to the officer's inbox. The subject line literally said "surprise for my girlfriend." With 2 exclamation points. It's almost poetic how a crime can have punctuation. At noon, a man in a paint-dotted apron showed up with a dolly and a clipboard. "Assembly appointment for a sectional," he said, and then, seeing my face, "You're not the first." He held out the work order like an offering. The note said Unit 1, girlfriend will buzz you in. Under contact, it had Kevin's number and a name for me he used to say when he'd gotten his way. I took a photo, told the guy to put me down as refused service, and sent the image to my case file. He tipped his head toward my dad's camera by the gutter and said, "Nice angle," which is the kind of ridiculous sentence I treasure now. At 3, a certified letter arrived from the court like a bureaucratic stork, notice of small claims. Kevin v. Me for $1,342. 19. Moving fees, time wasted, emotional distress. There is a heat that starts in my toes and climbs when a person tries to invoice you for the time they spent not hearing the word no. I drove to the courthouse and the security guy waved me through like we were now on nodding terms. The small claims clerk had square glasses and nails painted like tiny traffic lights. She stamped my response with the satisfaction of a person who believes in the power of the stamp and slid a sheet across the counter listing my hearing date and the rules. "No attorneys," she said. "Bring evidence." I thought about showing up with the couch on a dolly for dramatic effect and decided the paper trail was sexier. Dad came over with a 3-ring binder and this tenderness he disguises as office supplies.
My brother 3D printed index tabs labeled A, B, C, and then, because he's a menace, a bonus tab that said all caps, "Not your exhibit."
We slid in the police incident number from Saturday, the USPS cancellation form, the compost reinstatement email with that beautiful no authorized household members line, the bank call notes, the storage unit scrub confirmation, the sanitation waiver with the photo of the mattress wearing the moving box like a hat. Dad sharpened a pencil like he was whittling a spear. We didn't say a single dramatic thing and the air still felt like a scene. The hearing was this morning. A windowless room the color of overcooked oatmeal. A judge with hair parted exactly in the middle like he's been practicing drawing straight lines his entire life. Kevin sat on the opposite bench with his jaw set to serious man. He had a folder as thin as a dinner napkin and a tie I bought him 2 Christmases ago. The bailiff called our names. We stood at separate podiums like a bad game show. Kevin spoke first. He used words like plan, agreement, moment of emotion. He said I'd invited him to move in and then capriciously reversed course. He used that word twice. He said he had already integrated our lives and that his costs should be recognized. He did the little shrug he does when he thinks he's being reasonable and magnanimous, the shrug he uses like a chisel. I told the judge the sequence of things. I said we broke up. I said I changed my locks. I said he scheduled a delivery to my home over my objection, came to my porch with a box truck, was told to leave by police, attempted to change my mailing address, canceled my compost, attempted to add himself to my bank account, put my address on a storage unit, deposited a mattress on my curb at 2:47 a.m., and sent me flowers yesterday. I said there is an active restraining order. I handed the judge copies of everything in the binder. The traffic light nails clerk from earlier leaned her elbow on the ledge like she was settling in for a good book. The judge read. He did not look up for a long time. Then he did. His eyes were so quiet it felt like church. Sir, he said to Kevin, this is not a contract case. You don't get to invent a contract after the fact to cover behavior that, frankly, wouldn't be lawful even if there were one. He tapped the restraining order with his pen. This controls. He dismissed the claim with prejudice, which sings like a little bell when you hear it aloud. He told him if he used the court again as a tool of harassment he'd be considering sanctions. He awarded me costs. It is an adult thrill to have your copier fees validated by a person in a robe. Kevin's ears got red. He did not look at me because he can't. He looked at his own shoes like they owed him money. The bailiff muttered something to him about a separate exit for protection order cases and guided him toward a door I didn't know existed. The room exhaled. The judge slid my papers back in a stack that made me feel steady in places I forgot about. I walked out into the hallway to the sound of a vending machine eating someone's dollar and found the roommate's fiancée on a plastic chair with a manila envelope in her lap. I know you can't talk to him, she said in a whisper that had witnessed things, so I wanted to bring you these screenshots. A log of calls. A text where he wrote I'll just show up with the truck. She'll fold. Another that said women like a decisive man with a flexing arm emoji. I gave the envelope to the bailiff, who gave it to the clerk, who said she'd add it to my file like she was tucking a blanket around it. On the way home, a pizza guy arrived at the same time as me, box steam curling into the cold. Cash on delivery? He said, apologetic. The order name said girlfriend. I paid him because he looked like a person whose rent has a day of the month attached to it and took the stack to the shelter. The teenagers volunteering that day acted like I'd brought in a litter of golden retriever puppies. I sent the receipt and the phone number on the order to the officer assigned to my case. An hour later, a delivery truck I didn't recognize pulled up with a mini fridge and a clipboard that said COD $219. I did not pay for that one. The driver rolled his eyes toward heaven and said, people are wild, and took it back like we were returning a bad moral to the manufacturer. At home, I changed my Wi-Fi network to not your house _5G and watched my brother laugh like a kettle boiling when it popped up on his phone. He printed me a tiny raccoon and hot glued it next to the router like a gargoyle. Dad shook the ladder to test the camera by the curb, and I said please don't die on my sidewalk, and he said who would make your binders then, which is what passes for affection in a family where we hand each other wrenches instead of feelings. My mother came by an hour later to sit on my porch steps and not ask to come in. She had on sneakers like she was ready to run somewhere important. I told your aunt I was wrong, she said, and it was so quiet I almost missed it under the sound of an afternoon plane. I told her I moved the line you drew because I wanted an easier daughter than the one I got, and that's not your fault. She didn't hand me a key because there isn't one anymore. She handed me a folded index card with a list of the companies where she'd scrubbed his number from her phones. I can't take back what I did, she added, but I can stop doing it. It is shocking how easily your throat can become a fist. I nodded because speaking is hard when your muscles are holding something fragile in place. The shelter smelled like onions and Lysol and something sweet when I dropped the pizzas off. The ship guy was in the corner with his popsicle stick hull and the patience of a monk. I put a tiny plastic barrel in his palm and it sat there like a punctuation mark. He looked at it the way my dad looks at a fresh cut board. These look like barrels, not hot dogs, he said, with a satisfaction that fizzed. He lined them along the table and we argued for 10 minutes about staves versus hoops while the kitchen filled with people who are hungry and ready and my heart did that thing it does when I remember I'm good at showing up. Tonight, the raccoons came down the fence in single file, their little hands on the top slat like a parade, and found the bin lock a hard no. One of them sighed so loud I could hear it through glass in pride. The camera by the curb blinked an eye at the empty sidewalk as if to say, not tonight. After dinner, my phone buzzed with a message from the clerk. The judge had signed an addendum clarifying that third-party deliveries count as contact. It feels like a goofy cartoon when a piece of paper turns the ship of your day a degree and the whole ocean stops sloshing. I made tea. I took the hottest steam of the week and stood there until my mirror went soft around the edges and my skin smelled like eucalyptus and lemon tart and a person who chose her evening on purpose. The signs on the bathroom door said steam in progress and, underneath, steam, then scream if necessary. I did not scream. I didn't need to. If I had to name the week, I'd call it converting audacity into documentation. If I had to name the lesson, it would be this: you don't owe anyone a house they didn't build. And if you have to sue someone to make your couch true, it's not love. It's a receipt with my name scratched on it in pen. My curb has a camera now. My bank has a code word. My door has a lock I picked. My people have learned how to stop inviting storms and how to make garlic bread. And the only thing we're moving into is a life that keeps saying, clearly and calmly and as many times as it takes, not your house.